The rain was coming down like bullets that night on Route 9. The kind of storm that makes you question every decision that led you to being out on the open road. I pulled my bike over under the overpass, water streaming off my leather cut, and that's when I saw her. A girl, maybe 19 or 20, soaked to the bone. Mascara running down her face like black rivers, standing there with her thumb out like she had nowhere else in the world to go. I should have kept riding. Every instinct I'd developed in 15 years with the Iron Wolves MC told me to gun that throttle and disappear into the storm. But something in her eyes, that look of pure desperation mixed with defiance, it stopped me cold. I didn't know it then, but picking her up that night would shatter everything I thought I knew about loyalty, honor, and the price of doing what's right. Because 3 days later, I'd be standing in front of Marcus Reaper Kane, the president of my club, the man I'd bled for, the man I'd have died for, and he'd be looking at me with murder in his eyes. And the girl, she'd be standing behind him wearing his daughter's face. My name is Jake Ghost Mulligan, and for the better part of 2 decades, the Iron Wolves have been the only family I've ever known. I was 17 when Reaper found me sleeping behind a dumpster in South Boston, hungry, angry, and looking for any reason to burn the world down. He gave me a purpose. He gave me brothers. He gave me a code to live by. The code was simple. Loyalty above all. Never rat. Never steal from your brothers. And never, ever disrespect the club or the men who wear the patch. We weren't angels, the Iron Wolves. We ran guns, moved product across state lines, and settled our disputes with fists and sometimes worse. But we had honor in our own way. We protected our territory, looked after our own, and lived by rules that meant something in a world that had forgotten what rules were for. I'd risen through the ranks, earned my place as road captain, the man responsible for planning runs, keeping the pack safe on the highway, and making sure every brother made it home. I wore that responsibility like armor. It was who I was. That night on Route 9, I was coming back from a supply run in Providence, a routine job that should have been simple. The storm had rolled in fast, one of those late summer tempests that turned the highway into a river. Most riders would have found a motel and waited it out, but I'd been riding long enough that weather didn't scare me anymore. Nothing much did. Until I saw her. She was standing there in a thin dress that clung to her like a second skin, her brown hair plastered to her skull, shivering so hard I could see it from 20 feet away. No jacket, no bag, no car broken down nearby. Just a girl in the rain, looking like she'd walked out of her life and into the storm on purpose. I pulled up beside her, killing the engine. "You got a death wish standing out here?" She looked at me, and I saw it then. That thing I recognized because I'd worn it myself once. Fear, yes, but also determination. The look of someone who'd made a choice and wasn't backing down from it. "I need a ride," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Please, I'll pay you." "I'll do whatever you need. Just get me out of here." "Where's here?" I asked. "Away," she said. "Just away." I gave her my spare helmet, and she climbed on behind me, her arms wrapping around my waist like she was drowning, and I was the last piece of driftwood in the ocean. We rode for an hour through that storm, her body pressed against my back, and I didn't ask questions. In my world, you learned not to ask questions. People ended up on the side of the road in the rain for all kinds of reasons, and most of them weren't stories you wanted to hear. I took her to a roadside diner 20 miles outside Providence, one of those all-night places that smells like coffee and regret. We sat in a booth in the back, and I ordered her hot chocolate and a plate of eggs she didn't touch. "You running from something?" I finally asked. She wrapped her hands around the mug, like she was trying to absorb all its warmth. "Isn't everyone? Not like this. Not in the middle of a storm, with nothing but the clothes on your back." She looked up at me then, really looked at me, studying my face like she was trying to figure out if I was someone she could trust. "My name is Sarah," she said quietly. "And yes, I'm running. From a life I never wanted. From people who think they own me." I knew that feeling. I'd run from the same thing once. "Where are your people?" I asked. "I don't have people anymore," she said. "Not real ones. I should have left it there. Should have given her some cash, pointed her to a bus station, and disappeared back into my life. But something about her pulled at me, reminded me of the kid I used to be before Reaper saved me. So instead, I made a decision that would change everything. "I know a place you can stay for a few days," I said. "No questions asked, just until you figure out your next move." The place was a small apartment I kept on the edge of town, a spot the club didn't know about where I went when I needed to think. To get away from the noise and the brotherhood and the constant weight of being Ghost. I'd broken a rule bringing her there, bringing an outsider into my personal space, but I told myself it was temporary. A few days, maybe a week, and she'd be gone. We spent 3 days like that, existing in this strange bubble outside of reality. She didn't talk much about where she came from, and I didn't push. We watched old movies, ate takeout, and slowly she started to smile. Really smile. Not the scared, defensive thing she'd worn that first night. She was smart, funny in this dry way that caught me off guard. She asked me about my life, about the motorcycle, about what it meant to be part of a club. "It's family," I told her. "The only kind that matters. Family doesn't let you choose," she said. "That's what makes it family." "Maybe," I said. "But family also means never being alone. It means brothers who take a bullet for you without thinking twice." She got quiet then, something dark passing across her face. "Would they take a bullet for you if they knew you were hiding me?" Part 04. The turning point. On the 4th day, everything fell apart. I was at the clubhouse for church, our weekly meeting where the officers discussed club business. Reaper was pacing at the head of the table, his face carved from stone, and I knew immediately something was seriously wrong. Marcus Kane was a lot of things. Ruthless, calculating, fierce as hell when crossed, but he was never rattled. That day he looked like a man standing on the edge of an abyss. "We got a situation," he said, his voice tight. "My daughter Sarah disappeared 5 days ago. Vanished from her college in Boston. No note, no call, nothing." The room went silent. We all knew about Sarah, though most of us had never met her. Reaper kept his family life separate from the club, protected his daughter from the world we lived in. She was his soft spot, the one pure thing in his otherwise brutal existence. "I've got people looking," Reaper continued, "but I need every man on this. She could be in danger, could be grabbed by rivals, could be—" He stopped, his jaw working. "I need her found, now." My blood turned to ice. The girl in my apartment, with her brown hair and her defensive smile, her name was Sarah. Sarah Kane, Reaper's daughter. I'd been harboring the president's daughter for 3 days without knowing it, breaking the most fundamental rule of the club. Never lie to your brothers. And I'd lied by omission, hidden her away, while Reaper was tearing himself apart looking for her. After church, I pulled Reaper aside. "Can I see a picture of her?" He showed me his phone, and there she was. Same eyes, same face, just cleaner, happier, posed in front of some college building with a backpack over her shoulder. "My Sarah, except she wasn't mine at all. You see her anywhere, you call me immediately," Reaper said, gripping my shoulder. "Ghost, you're my road captain. You're out there more than anyone. You see something, anything, you bring her home." I nodded, feeling like the floor was crumbling beneath me. I had 2 choices. Tell Reaper right now that I had his daughter, that I'd picked her up on Route 9 and been hiding her for days. Face his rage, the club's judgment, probably lose my patch and maybe worse. Or say nothing, keep her hidden, and hope I could convince her to go home before anyone found out. I chose wrong. I went back to the apartment and found Sarah sitting on the couch. And when I walked in, she took one look at my face and knew. "You figured it out," she said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. "Do you have any idea what you've put me in the middle of? Because if I'd told you whose daughter I was, you never would have helped." She had me there. If I brought her in now, I'd have to explain why I waited, why I didn't say something the moment I saw her picture. The club would see it as betrayal, and in our world, betrayal had only one punishment. "Why did you run?" I asked, trying to understand. She sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because I'm suffocating. Because every choice in my life has been made for me. Where I go to school, what I study, who I'm allowed to date, who I'm allowed to be friends with. He controls everything, Ghost. He says it's for my protection, but it's really about control. And I can't live like that anymore. I understood that feeling more than she knew. Before the club, I'd been under someone else's thumb. A father who used his fists to make his points. A system that treated kids like me like we were disposable. Reaper had saved me from that, given me freedom. But somewhere along the way, had I just traded one cage for another? He loves you, I said. In his way, I know, she said softly. That's what makes it so hard. Over the next 2 days, I tried to figure a way out of the mess I'd created. I couldn't keep her hidden forever. The club was turning over every stone in a 3-state radius, and eventually someone would spot her, or she'd be seen coming in or out of my place. But I also couldn't just hand her over, not after hearing her story, not after seeing what freedom meant to her. She reminded me too much of myself. The decision was taken out of my hands on the 6th day. I was at the apartment with Sarah when I heard motorcycles outside, the distinct rumble of multiple bikes pulling up. I looked out the window and saw them, 6 brothers from the club, including Reaper. Someone had seen us. Someone had talked. They're here, I said. Sarah's face went pale. What do we do? We face this, I said. Together. I opened the door before they could kick it in. Reaper stood there, his face a mask of controlled fury, and behind him I could see the rest of the brothers, their expressions ranging from confusion to anger. Inside, Reaper said. Now. We all filed in, and the apartment suddenly felt claustrophobic, filled with leather and judgment and the weight of broken trust. Sarah stood behind me, and I could feel her trembling. Reaper looked at his daughter, and I saw the relief flood through him, just for a moment, before the anger took over. Sarah, thank God you're safe. Dad, she said, but he held up a hand. Not now, he turned to me. You've had my daughter for 6 days while I've been losing my mind. While the club has been tearing apart the eastern seaboard looking for her. And you said nothing. I didn't know who she was at first, I said. By the time I figured it out, I was already in too deep. You should have called me the second you realized, Reaper said, his voice deadly quiet. That's what a brother does. That's what loyalty means. She didn't want to be found, I said. She's 19 years old, Reaper snapped. She doesn't get to make that call. I'm standing right here, Sarah said, her voice stronger than I expected. And Ghost is right. I didn't want to be found. I ran away, Dad, from you, from your world, because I can't breathe anymore. Reaper turned to his daughter, and I saw something crack in his armor. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I can't have a conversation without one of your guys listening in, Sarah said, the words pouring out now. I can't go on a date without background checks. I can't choose my own major without you telling me what's practical for your world. I'm not your daughter anymore, Dad. I'm your prisoner. I'm protecting you, Reaper said. Do you have any idea how many enemies I have? How many people would love to get their hands on you to hurt me? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you chose this life, Sarah said. Or maybe you should let me make my own choices about the risks I'm willing to take. The room went silent. The other brothers shifted uncomfortably, not wanting to be in the middle of this family drama. But I stood my ground because I understood both sides of this fight in a way that hurt. Reaper looked at me, and I saw the betrayal in his eyes. You turned my daughter against me. No, I said. I gave her a safe place to think. That's all. You broke the code, Reaper said. You lied to your brothers. You put your feelings for some girl above the club. She's not some girl, I said. She's your daughter. And she was scared and alone on the side of the road in a storm. What would you have wanted someone to do if they found her like that? Ignore her? Leave her there? I would have wanted them to bring her home, Reaper said. To a home she was running from, I said. That's not helping, Marcus. That's just making the cage more comfortable. Using his real name was a gamble, bringing the conversation from club business to something more personal. Reaper's jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might hit me. Instead, he turned back to Sarah. Is that what I am to you? He asked quietly. A jailer? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You're my father, and I love you. But yes, sometimes that's exactly what it feels like. What happened next, I didn't expect. Reaper pulled up a chair and sat down, suddenly looking older than his 48 years. The president, the road warrior, The man who'd built the Iron Wolves into one of the most respected clubs in New England, looked lost. After your mother died, he said slowly, you were all I had left that was good. Everything else in my life was blood and violence and choices I can't take back. But you were pure. You were the proof that I wasn't completely damned. And I couldn't lose you too. So I held on too tight. Sarah moved closer to her father, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to lose you either, Dad, but I can't be your proof of redemption. I need to be my own person. Reaper looked up at her, and I saw the man behind the legend, the father behind the president. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to keep you safe if I let you go. You don't, Sarah said softly. That's the whole point. You trust that you raised me right, and you let me make my own mistakes. He turned to me then. Ghost, you knew what this would cost you, keeping her here. Why'd you do it? I thought about it, about all the reasons I could give, about loyalty and honor and the code. But in the end, the truth was simpler than that, because 15 years ago you found me on the street and gave me a chance to be something other than what the world said I had to be. I said, you gave me choice, Marcus, a family I chose instead of one I was stuck with. How could I not give your daughter the same thing? The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Reaper stood up, walked over to me, and I braced myself for whatever was coming. Instead, he put his hand on my shoulder. You broke the code, he said. You should lose your patch for this. I know, I said, but you also did exactly what I would have wanted someone to do for my daughter if I wasn't the man I am. He continued. You kept her safe. You listened to her. You treated her like a person, not a possession. And that's worth something. He turned to the other brothers. Ghost stays. This conversation doesn't leave this room. Understood. They all nodded, looking relieved that the tension was breaking. Reaper took Sarah home that night, but things were different. He promised to back off, to let her make her own choices about school, about her life, about how much contact she wanted with his world. It wouldn't be easy, and they'd have fights, and sometimes that protective instinct would override his better judgment. But it was a start. As for me, I kept my patch, but I learned something about the code that night. Loyalty isn't just about following orders or keeping secrets. It's about doing right by the people who matter, even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you. Sarah came by the apartment a week later to return my spare helmet. Thank you, she said, for not treating me like a problem to be solved. Thank you for reminding me why I joined this club in the first place, I said. It wasn't about the violence or the reputation. It was about finding people who'd stand up for you when the world tried to push you down. She smiled then, that real smile I'd seen in those 3 days. Dad wants you to come to Sunday dinner. Fair warning, he's not much of a cook. I'll be there, I said. After she left, I sat on my bike outside the apartment. Rain starting to fall again, lighter this time, and thought about the strange path that had led me here. How one choice in a storm can change everything. How sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to honor what they really mean. People ask me sometimes what it means to be part of a motorcycle club. What the code really is when you strip away the leather and the patches and the reputation. I tell them it's about brotherhood, about loyalty, about living by rules that mean something in a world that's forgotten what rules are for. But the truth is deeper than that. The code isn't just about following orders or protecting territory. It's about recognizing that everyone's fighting their own battles, carrying their own weight, trying to find freedom in whatever form that takes. And sometimes, the most loyal thing you can do is help someone find their freedom, even when it costs you everything. I gave a girl a ride in the rain that night on Route 9. She was running from a cage, disguised as protection. From love that held too tight, from a future she didn't choose. I couldn't have known she was the boss's daughter. I couldn't have known that helping her would put me at odds with the very code I'd lived by for 15 years. But I'd make the same choice again, because the code, the real code, isn't about blind obedience. It's about seeing someone in need and not looking away. It's about recognizing yourself in a stranger's eyes and remembering what it felt like to be saved. Reaper gave me a family when I had nothing. That night in the rain, I passed that gift forward. And in doing so, I learned that sometimes the strongest loyalty is knowing when to break ranks, when to trust your gut over your orders, when to remember that we're all just people trying to survive the storm. The Iron Wolves are still my family. Marcus is still my president. But I know now that family means more than just following the rules. It means understanding why those rules exist in the first place, and having the courage to question them when they stop serving the people you love. That's the code they don't write down. That's the loyalty they don't teach. And that's the lesson I learned the night I gave a girl a ride in the rain and discovered she was the boss's daughter, and found out that sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything you've built. Because in the end, what's the point of brotherhood if it doesn't make you a better man? What's the point of family if it doesn't teach you that love means letting go? What's the point of loyalty if it doesn't challenge you to be loyal to yourself first? I still ride Route 9 sometimes, especially when it rains. I pull over at that same overpass and remember that night, that choice, that moment when everything changed. And I think about all the people out there in their own storms, waiting for someone to stop, to see them, to take a chance. Maybe that's what the code really means. Maybe that's what being an Iron Wolf is really about. Not the violence or the reputation or the fear we inspire, but the simple act of stopping for someone in the rain and asking where they need to go, even if the answer is away. Especially if the answer is away, because sometimes the bravest ride you'll ever take isn't through the storm. It's helping someone else find their way out of theirs.